role that NCOs play in small units especially. But that was also a part of the training that the Ukrainian military received from the U.S. forces. Is that still continuing? Are they still doing that, or has the exigencies of war sort of wiped that out?
So we'll get back to you in terms of the specifics on that aspect of the training. What I would say is yes, broadly speaking, that highlighting and working with the Ukrainians in terms of NCO leadership is something that we have done. This is a strategic advantage in a lot of ways of the U.S. military and many Western militaries is the non-commissioned officer corps in terms of what they bring to the battlefield and enabling modern militaries. So I do know that is an area that is of continued importance, but let us get back to you in terms of specific training on that front. Thanks, Jim. All right, let's go back out to the phone lines here. Do we have Fox News?
Hey, yes, Liz Frieden with Fox News. Thanks for taking my question. As far as the Iranian capturing the sea drones last week, there were 2 different incidents in the Middle East. Does the U.S. make anything of this happening suddenly as the Iran negotiations are ongoing with the nuclear deal? And is this part of a greater trend?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Liz. So we do not see the two as connected. Again, as you're aware, in the case of the sail drones, we did recover the drones, and it's just another example of Iranian activity in this region that is unprofessional and problematic. And so certainly we'll continue to keep an eye on that front. But again, to answer your question, we do not see those two as connected. Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you for taking my question. Last week, the Wall Street Journal reported the Pentagon created a new task force to expedite the arms sales to U.S. allies and partners last month. First, could you confirm the report? And secondly, is there a concern in the Pentagon that the U.S. will not be able to sufficiently arm Taiwan by 2027 when the U.S. military assesses that China will have capabilities to invade Taiwan?
Yeah, so in terms of the Foreign Military Sales Tiger Team, yes, we did recently initiate an internal FMS Tiger Team process and exploring a wide range of immediate and systemic areas for reform of Department of Defense processes, platforms, and regional perspectives to improve our ability to work with allies and partners. And it's important to highlight the fact that this endeavor is not focused on a particular region. It's rather designed to intensively explore and look at internal processes throughout the department. And so this is largely focused on efficiency. And I'm sorry, can you ask your second question again?
So is there any particular concern in the Pentagon that the U.S. will not provide a sufficient number of weapon systems to Taiwan by 2027 when the U.S. military says that China could have capabilities to invade Taiwan?
So what I would tell you is that we'll continue to work closely with our international partners and allies. I don't have any specific remarks or comments to make today in regard to Taiwan or potential or future military sales, other than to say that we'll continue to work very closely on stability in the region and work closely with our partners in the region to ensure that stays the case. Thank you. Fadi, and then we'll go to the phone.
Thank you, General. So just to follow up on the question on the said drone incident, specifically the second one, Wall Street Journal reported over the weekend that the cameras on both drones were missing. First of all, are you able to confirm that report, and whether Iran took the cameras, or do you have an idea where they are now?
So I can confirm that the cameras were missing. These are unclassified, unsensitive, off-the-shelf technology. In terms of what specifically happened to them, I don't have that information, so no, I can't confirm that Iran took them. Because these are commercial off-the-shelf systems, certainly I'd refer you to NavCent in terms of the efforts to repair these, but no particular concerns in regards to the fact that, again, this was not sensitive equipment.
Is there an effort to communicate with the Iranians to ask if they actually have the cameras?
I don't have any information into that. Again, what I would say is that we call on the Iranians to exercise good seamanship and observe the international rules and norms when it comes to operating in this area. Thank you. Yes, sir.
General, last week we have seen Greeks using their S-300s locked on Turkish jets conducting NATO mission. Is it an acceptable behavior for the United States, particularly when you think the mission was a NATO mission?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Qasim. What I would tell you is I'm aware of those reports, but I don't have any information to provide from here.
But in terms of policy, for example, the United States military is also conducting a lot of missions like this over the partner skies, in partner skies. Do you think that something like this happened to the United States, would that be acceptable?
Well, I don't want to get into hypotheticals, right? What I would tell you is that Secretary Austin has talked in the past with both his Turkish and his Greek counterparts and emphasized the need for continued efforts to reduce tensions in the Aegean through constructive dialogue. So I'd leave it at that. Thank you. Let me go ahead and go to the phone here. Tony Capaccio from Bloomberg.
Hi, sir. I had a quick question on the Ukraine on the Afghanistan after action report. You mentioned last week that a classified version has been prepared. What organization has prepared it? Was that the National Defense University? And what are your plans for releasing fairly quickly the executive summary, at least?
Thanks, Tony. So yes, National Defense University was responsible for compiling the report. And I'm not going to put a timeline on when the Secretary's review will be complete, nor when we will have an unclassified aspect of that report available for release.
Well, Pat, will you at least commit to an expedited review of the classification of the report so that the public can see this and it's just not leaked out?
Certainly, Tony. I'll commit to taking your question and taking a look at that, and when we have something available, we will be sure to provide that. Thank you, though. Okay, let's do one more from the phone here. Joe Gould, Defense News.
Hi, General. Thanks for taking my question. I have a two-parter also in light of the Ukraine aid request from the administration. First part is, what's the current number of U.S. troops mobilized in Europe to bolster NATO since the invasion? Is that still about 10,000? And then also, is it correct that there's about $2.8 billion in presidential drawdown authority that's gone unused and will be allowed to expire at the end of the fiscal year?
Okay, so in terms of U.S. troop presence in Europe, yes, the numbers have remained the same. We're at about 100,000 U.S. forces in the AOR, in addition to the troops that we deployed to support, provide additional support. In terms of aid for Ukraine, certainly, I don't want to speculate about future funding other than to say that we are committed to using the aid that we have to support Ukraine, and we'll continue to work very closely with the interagency and with Congress to ensure that we're spending that aid as expeditiously as possible to support them in their fight.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Felicia Schwartz from the Financial Times. On the training, in the past we've gotten numbers of how many Ukrainians have gone through, on specific systems like the HIMARS or drones in some instances. Do you have any updated numbers or even ballpark figures about how many Ukrainians have been through training at this point?
I don't have that right in front of me, but let me take that question and we'll see what we can provide you.
Thank you. Okay.
Let's go back up to the phone line here. Heather from USNI.
Thanks so much. I was just wondering if we can get an updated maritime update of what's going on out in Ukraine in the Black Sea.
Sure. I can talk in broad terms, Heather. We continue to see the grain shipments departing Odessa, which is a positive thing. We continue to stay focused on that. In terms of operational updates, clearly I don't want to get into intelligence from the podium here, other than to say that we keep a close eye on that region as the conflict continues to unfold. Thank you. All right. Yes, sir.
Logan Raddick with Newsmax. Just a quick question for you about Taiwan again. What is the Pentagon's assessment of the conflict between China and Taiwan right now in the Taiwan Strait?
An assessment of the conflict in what sense?
Latest of what's going on right now in the last couple of days.
In terms of specifics on the ground activity, I'd refer you to Taiwan. Obviously, from a U.S. military standpoint, we continue to operate in the region, most recently on 28 August, of course, with our Taiwan Strait transit. It's one of those regions that we will continue to keep a close eye on with our partners and our allies in the region. Certainly, there is tension there, but we would call on China to continue to ensure the stability of the region, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. We'll go to Laura, and then one more on the phone here.
Just to follow up on that, we heard from Colin Powell a couple weeks ago that there were no new assessments that China was going to invade Taiwan any sooner than we previously thought. Is that, now that a couple weeks have passed since these exercises happened and we've seen China kind of continuing to violate Taiwan's airspace, is there any new assessments going on about the prospect of this happening in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any new assessments. Louis.
So you go back to the questions about North Korea. What are some of the capabilities that North Korea could actually offer Russia in its fight in Ukraine?
Well, the information that we have is that Russia has specifically asked for ammunition. But in terms of the capabilities, I don't want to speculate on what Russia may or may not need beyond that, or what they could offer.
Are you seeing any indications that Russia is making similar reach-out efforts to friendly nations around the world? I mean, we've seen the Iran drone deal, now this information which you've declassified. Are they making other contacts around the world to do pretty much the same thing, which is reach out for ammunition and other significant impacts?
So based on the information that I have, I would say at this point in time, we've seen North Korea and Iran as the countries that they've reached out to. So thank you. Okay, let's go to Jeff Selden, VOA.
General, thanks very much for doing this. One question on Russia, one on Iran. Just generally, what is the latest that the Pentagon has in terms of any changes to Russia's nuclear posture, especially with the Ukrainian counteroffensive seeming to make some steps? And also on Iran, can you explain, what does the Pentagon make of Iran's increased aggressiveness, both in terms, we saw it last week with the attempts to capture a couple of the sail drones, but are you seeing that matched by the IRGC or Iran's proxy forces, whether in the Middle East or beyond, in terms of Iran's aggressive posture?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. No changes. In terms of your first question, no changes in terms of the posture. Again, that is an area that we'll just continue to keep a very close eye on. As far as the motivations behind Iran, again, I'd refer you to them for any discussion of their motivations. In terms of if you look at the behavior of Iran over the long term in this region of the world, these types of incidents unfortunately are not that uncommon. Again, it's an area that we continue to monitor, but the kind of unprofessional, inappropriate behavior when it comes to these type of harassing actions are not helpful in the region when it comes to preserving peace and stability and international waterways. Thanks, Jeff. All right, let me go to Jeff Shogel, Task and Purpose.
Thank you. The Defense Department will stop issuing the National Defense Service Medal as of December 31st. Would it be accurate to say the department is acknowledging the global war on terrorism has ended?
Well, certainly we want to recognize those who have supported and engaged in this operation. Certainly over the last 20 years, a lot of men and women in the U.S. military have worked very hard to counter terrorism. But in terms of the actual medal, Jeff, let me get back to you on that and its current status. Thank you. All right. Any others in the room here? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. In light of President Biden's recent speech in Philadelphia, does the Pentagon have a position on the use of serving military forces in photo ops like that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think the White House addressed that question the other day, so I'd refer you back to the White House. All right, let me go to Mike Brest, Washington Examiner.
Asked and answered. Thank you.
Nancy from Wall Street Journal.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to an announcement you made last week about a review of Afghanistan for purposes of a presidential unit citation. Can we please get a list of all open reports related to, all open reviews related to Afghanistan? And also, I'd like to revisit something that Tony was asking earlier. Secretary Austin, when he announced the after action report, said that it was important that we are able to learn a lesson, that he would do so, and that review would be happening in the days ahead. That was more than a year ago. I would ask that you please take the question of when that report will be declassified, or some version of it. I don't think it's fair to the American public that has been promised some public accounting of what happened in those final days in Afghanistan, an open-ended promise of maybe declassifying such an essential report. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. Yes, again, I'll commit to taking that question. And, you know, as part of this process, obviously, and as a organization that, for obvious reasons, was very actively involved in Afghanistan, we want to make sure that we're capturing those lessons learned and that we're able to apply those lessons not only to today, but future operations. Certainly understand the interest in this topic, both as a service member and as an American. So again, I'll take that question and we'll get back to you as soon as we can in terms of what we'll be able to provide on an unclassified note. And then, I'm sorry, you had another part to your question? Oh, on the unit citations. So again, part of that direction was for the services to do the expedited review as far as which units they recommend for the presidential unit citation. And so the services in and of themselves should have information on their own efforts. Certainly this is not the only recognition that's being provided or has been provided for operations related to Afghanistan, but we'll take your question and provide what we can. Thank you. Okay, let me go to Paul Hanley, AFP.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Look, going back to the sail drones, can you say on what basis these were recovered? What demands did the U.S. Navy make to the Iranians, and was there threat leveled? Was there kinetic force considered? And stepping back more broadly, can you say how many of these have you deployed in the Gulf, and are they only there, or is the Navy using them as in such a large number elsewhere in the world?
Sure. To answer your first question, so as I understand it, the Iranian Navy held these sail drones on their deck of their ship overnight and returned them the next morning. In terms of how long they've been operating in the vicinity or in this area, this is part of, these drones are operated as part of 5th Fleet's Task Force 59. They've been operating in the region since the beginning of the year, so January of 2022. And they are a way that we are able to provide information to NAVCENT quickly as far as safely transiting the area, providing information in terms of potential issues or threats in the area. But bottom line is that, again, there was no situation in which forces were as you put it, hostile. This was, they took them, and then the 2 U.S. Navy guided missile destroyers that were operating in the vicinity responded, moved into the area, but then shortly after, like I said, overnight, the Iranians released them. Thank you. All right, well, we've got time for just a couple more. We'll go to Tony Bertuccia, Inside Defense.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Last week, DOT&E Nicholas Geerton was tapped for a job to be an ASD with the Navy for research, development, and acquisition. And those are 2 very different jobs, right? One's a unbiased evaluator of weapons programs, and the other one is an advocate for weapons programs. Is Mr. Geerton going to stay on as DOT&E while he pursues confirmation in the Navy job? And then how does the department adjust to potential conflict of interest that this might cause?
Yeah, thanks very much for the question, Tony. Let me take that one and get back to you. I just don't have the insight to provide on that, so let me get back to you on that one. Barbara Starr, CNN.
I wanted to follow up on a couple of things. On Afghanistan, because military public affairs does have the job of communicating information to the public as long as it doesn't violate national security, can you get us at least an answer on what office might be advocating in front of the Secretary for some kind of declassification of this report? Who is putting the case to him, if anyone, that it's a good idea to offer some level of public knowledge on this? My second question is, I'm still not hearing you use the word counteroffensive in regards to the Ukrainian moves in Kherson and around there. And I'm curious why the Pentagon is still not comfortable saying counteroffensive. And very quickly, my third question, can you give us any indication, do you have concerns that Russia might be reaching out to China for munitions, or that the Chinese may be offering munitions to Russia? Does that concern you? Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. So on your first question, I mean, certainly public affairs does play a role in providing advice and counsel when it comes to the public release of information of interest to the public and to members of the Department of Defense. And so we are and will be a part of those conversations. And again, I take the point. It's well taken in terms of the importance of this information, not only to our service members, but to the American public. In regards to Ukrainian operations, this is a Ukrainian military operation. I'll leave it to the Ukrainians. We'll leave it to the Ukrainians to characterize or define their operations in terms of where they are in their campaign. And so, again, it's not appropriate for me as a Department of Defense spokesperson to characterize it for them. And then finally, in regards to China and Russia, certainly as evidenced by Russia's most recent exercises and other activities, there is a relationship between China and Russia in terms of what Russia may be asking of China or not. I don't have any information to provide from the podium on that, other than to say that in an era of strategic competition, we'll continue to keep a very close eye on Russia and China and the threats that they pose to international stability and the international rules and norms that have largely kept the world safe for the last 70+ years since World War II. Thanks, Barbara. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate your time today.